William Shakespeare Lesson 3. William Shakespeare's Hamlet. Learning objectives. The primary objective of this unit is to introduce William Shakespeare's Hamlet. Among the 4 lessons devoted to the discussion of this play, the present lesson introduces Shakespeare and his works. Hamlet being a tragedy, we shall discuss the characteristics of a classical tragedy. By the end of this lesson, you are expected to form an idea of Shakespeare so as to understand and appreciate the play. Life of Shakespeare. William Shakespeare. William Shakespeare was born in 1564 in Stratford-on-Avon. His father was a merchant, and had never been rich. He had 3 brothers and 2 sisters. Shakespeare joined the grammar school of Stratford for his school education. However, he had to leave the school just at the age of 13 as his father ran into several problems. Subsequently, Shakespeare had to work at an early age in order to supplement the income of his family. Thus, he was denied of learning in the formal education system. Perhaps it is because of this reason that Shakespeare was criticized of not knowing the classical knowledge. For instance, Ben Jonson, his contemporary playwright, ridiculed Shakespeare by saying that he, Shakespeare, knew small Latin and less Greek. However, it may be said that his literary works hold testimony to the scholarship of not only Latin and Greek but also that of many other languages. Shakespeare married Anne Hathaway when he was 19 years old. Hathaway was said to be older than Shakespeare by 8 years. They had rather unhappy relations between themselves. They gave birth to 3 children, Susanna, Hamlet and Judith. Shakespeare had a very turbulent life both in his childhood and adulthood. He could not find Stratford-on-Avon, his birthplace, suitable for making both the ends meet. In search of a better livelihood, Shakespeare left for London in his 21st year. As part of finding a career for himself, Shakespeare tried his hand at acting. He joined a company of actors with the name, Lord Chamberlain's Company. It was at these times that he also attempted to write, and subsequently wrote Venus and Adonis in the year 1593. Fully involving himself in the stagecraft, he started acquainting himself with the stage effects. In other words, Shakespeare was undergoing the experience of stage performance both as an actor and as a stage craftsman. This experience was of immense use to him in turning himself into a successful playwright. For the purpose of your present study of Shakespeare's plays, it is not necessary to know each and every detail of his personal life. Therefore, you are given in these pages Shakespeare's life in a very sketchy manner. You may find it interesting to know the following chronology of important incidents in the life of Shakespeare. 3.1.1 Chronology of chief incidents in Shakespeare's life. 1564 April 26, Shakespeare baptized. 1571 At the age of 7, according to the custom of time, Shakespeare's school life probably began. 1575 Queen Elizabeth visited the Earl of Leicester at Kenilworth. Shakespeare's father might have taken him to witness the Kenilworth festivities, A Midsummer Night's Dream, 2, 3. 1578 Shakespeare left school, his father's fortunes at a low ebb. 1582 Shakespeare married Anne Hathaway. 1583 May 26 Shakespeare's daughter, Susanna baptized. 1585 February 2, Shakespeare's twin children, Hamlet and Judith, baptized. 1586 Shakespeare left Stratford. 1592 Shakespeare referred to in Green's Groat's Worth of Wit. 1593 Venus and Adonis published and dedicated to Southampton. 1594 Titus Andronicus acted by the Earl of Sussex's men. 1596 August 11. Shakespeare's son, Hamlet buried. 1597 May 4 Shakespeare bought new place. 1598 Francis Mears Palladius Tannus published, which contained a list of Shakespeare's plays up to date in a chronological order. Shakespeare acted in Ben Jonson's Every Man in His Humour. 1599 Shakespeare purchased share in the Globe. 1601 Essex executed, and Southampton imprisoned. John Shakespeare buried. 1602 May 1, Shakespeare purchased 107 acres of arable land which he added to New Place. 1603 February 2, Shakespeare's company performed before the Queen's Richmond. 1604 March 15, Shakespeare took part in the procession on the occasion of James' entry. 1607 Susanna married to John Hall. 1608 September 9, Shakespeare's mother buried. Shakespeare established himself at New Place. 1609 Sonnets published. 1613 The Tempest performed at the festivities in the celebration of the marriage of Princess Elizabeth with the Elector Frederick. The Globe burnt down. 1616 January 26, Shakespeare made his will, not signed till March 25. April 23 died. April 24 buried in the channel of Stratford Church. The incidents enlisted above suggest that Shakespeare had a checkered growth both at personal and literary level. Shakespeare himself might not have imagined when left for London that he was to become a playwright of all the places and all the times. 3.2 Works of Shakespeare. In all, Shakespeare wrote 37 plays. Besides these plays, Shakespeare also penned poetry that includes about 154 sonnets. You will read about the Shakespeare sonnets in a different unit in this book. In the present section you are introduced to the plays of Shakespeare in general so that you can form a rough idea of what Shakespeare's plays are. Shakespeare's first published work was Venus and Adonis, 1593. He began his writing career with this and the other poems as the London theatres were closed because of the outbreak of the dreaded plague. Between the years 1591 and 1613, Shakespeare happened to write all of his 37 plays. However, it should be noted at this juncture that his plays were not published immediately after their being written. This is so primarily because the plays were meant for enactment on the stage, and not for reading. Most of his plays used to be circulated in the form of manuscript. The companies in those days used to own the copyrights and not the playwrights. Shakespeare's plays are broadly classified into three categories, namely the comedies, the tragedies and the histories. Of the 37 plays, 17 are the comedies, 10 are the tragedies and the remaining 10 are classified to be the histories. The following table gives you information at a glance on the names and classification of the plays, and also the years of their publication. 3.2.1 A List of works. A classified list of complete works of Shakespeare is provided in a chronological order. The comedies, tragedies and the historical dramas are given separately. Let us take a bird's eye view. 1591 Henry VI, Part 1, Comedy. 1592 Comedy of Errors, Comedy. Henry VI, Part 3, History. 1592 Two Gentlemen of Verona, Comedy, Henry VI, Part 3, History. 1593 Love's Labour's Lost, Comedy. Titus Andronicus, Tragedy, Richard III, History. 1594 King John, History. 1595 Midsummer Night's Dream, Comedy, Romeo and Juliet, Tragedy. Richard II, History. 1596 The Merchant of Venice, Comedy. 1596 Taming of the Shrew, Comedy. 1597 Henry IV, Part 1, History. 1598 Much Ado About Nothing, Comedy, Henry IV, Part 2, History. 1599 As You Like It, Comedy, Julius Caesar, Tragedy. 1599 Merry Wives of Windsor, Comedy, Henry V, History. 1601 Twelfth Night, Comedy, Hamlet, Tragedy. 1602 Troilus and Cressida, Comedy. 1602 All's Well That Ends Well, Comedy. 1604 Measure for Measure, Comedy, Othello, Tragedy. 1605 King Lear, Tragedy. 1606 Macbeth, tragedy. 1607 Timon of Athens, tragedy. 1607 Antony and Cleopatra, tragedy. 1608 Pericles, comedy. 1609 Coriolanus, tragedy. 1610 Cymbeline, comedy. 1611 Winter's Tale, comedy. 1611 Tempest, comedy. 1613 Henry VIII, history. In paper I of your course, 3 of Shakespeare's plays have been prescribed. They include Hamlet, a tragedy, Twelfth Night, a comedy, and Henry IV, Part 1, a historical drama. In order to understand and appreciate Hamlet, the students should have a fair idea about the classical tragedy, especially as enunciated by Aristotle. Aristotle's Poetics is an important work that helps us in understanding the concept of tragedy. The following section is devoted to the characteristics of classical tragedy. Classical tragedy. Hamlet is a tragedy. To understand and appreciate the play as a tragedy, it is necessary on your part to know the characteristics of the classical tragedy. The following section is devoted to the discussion of the tragedy. 3.3.1 Definition of tragedy. Aristotle defines tragedy as an imitation of an action that is serious, complete, and of a certain magnitude. In a language embellished with each kind of artistic ornament, Aristotle considers that tragedy is the most superior form of art. According to him, tragedy is the imitation of noble action of good men. He contrasts tragedy with comedy. Comedy is an imitation of the action of bad men. Hence, according to him, tragedy is superior to comedy. Aristotle also compares tragedy to an epic. In his view, the epic comes next only to tragedy. Aristotle gives utmost importance to tragedy because it consists of the following elements. 3.3.2 The plot. Out of all the elements of the tragedy, the plot is the most important one. He considers that the plot is the soul of the tragedy. The plot is an artistic arrangement of incidents or events in a drama. It should have the unity of action. A plot need not necessarily contain all the action of the hero. A plot is the structuring of various incidents. Apart from the unity of action, the plot should also have the unity of time. All the incidents should have taken place within 24 hours. However, Aristotle is not particular about the unity of place. According to Aristotle, there are 2 types of plots. These are the complex plot and the simple plot. The complex plot is complex in nature and structure. Any plot that has peripeteia and anagnorisis is known as a complex plot. Peripeteia means the reversal of intention. The intentions of the protagonist in a tragedy face a reversal. The action does not take place according to the intentions of the protagonist. Most of the ancient and Elizabethan tragedies have this quality. For instance, there is peripeteia in Dr. Faustus. Faustus intends to be all-powerful. But, against his will, there is a reversal of his intentions. The element of peripeteia ultimately leads to the downfall of Faustus. Another element of a complex plot is anagnorisis. The meaning of anagnorisis is the recognition of truth. The protagonist of a tragedy realizes the truth about his downfall. For example, Faustus recognizes the truth towards the end of the play. However, such recognition of truth does not help the protagonist. Because the recognition takes place too late. A plot without the elements of peripeteia and anagnorisis is considered to be a simple plot. The protagonist does not face any reversal of his intentions. Similarly, the protagonist does not recognize the truth. Whether a simple plot or a complex plot, the plot itself plays a vital role in the success of tragedy. The greatness of a tragedy lies in the structure of the plot. Hence, Aristotle considers plot the soul of the tragedy. 3.3.3 The character, tragic hero. Next to plot, Aristotle gives second importance lower to the characters. Aristotle's definition of tragedy is very much relevant to the character. Tragedy is an imitation of men in action. A character emerges out of his or her action. Out of all the characters, the tragic hero is the most important one. A tragic hero is neither perfectly good nor bad. Being a virtuous man, a tragic hero should contain human weakness in him. It is a combination of the virtue and the human weakness that constitutes a tragic hero. 3.3.4 HAMARTIA, Tragic Flaw. Another most important element of a tragedy is hamartia, a Greek word meaning tragic flaw or tragic error. As already discussed, a tragic hero is both heroic and virtuous. In spite of these qualities, the tragic hero meets a fatal end. Because he commits a mistake or error at a crucial juncture. This error is considered to be hamartia. Most of the ancient and Elizabethan dramas contain the element of hamartia. 3.3.5 Thought and Action. The next element of tragedy is thought and action. Thought is what a character thinks. The entire thinking of the protagonist constitutes the thought of a tragedy. The thought is conveyed through the dialogue. The dialogue, in turn, is the result of the emotions and feelings of the character. The virtuous thought is represented by the chief protagonist. The evil thought is conveyed by the antagonist. The conflict between the protagonist and antagonist is, in fact, the conflict between the virtue and the evil. The poetic justice is absent. 3.3.6 Catharsis. The objective of a tragedy is to provide an outlet to the emotions and feelings. Catharsis is a Greek word, which means the outlet. The spectators are likely to have pent-up emotions and feelings, which need to be let out. A good tragedy is the best means of catharsis. In other words, a tragedy purifies the mind and soul of the spectators. 3.3.7 Song, Diction and Spectacle. These three elements are the means of the playwright. The writer uses song, diction and spectacle in order to create plot, character and thought. The song is the choice of the words that contribute to rhyme, rhythm, music and melody. Diction is the choice of words that are useful in thought. The spectacle is the stage representation, enactment and techniques. The techniques of the stage are called the spectacle. 3.4 Conclusion. Most of the views of the tragedy expressed by Aristotle are relevant to the tragedies of Shakespeare. However, Shakespeare conveniently violated in his plays certain norms like the three unities and tragic comedy. Anyway, you will learn about the characteristics of Shakespearean tragedy. The following lesson, you are going to learn about Hamlet in detail. Self-check questions. 1. Define tragedy, and comment on the characteristics of the tragedy. 2. What do you know about Shakespeare's life?